And as we just reported, today is Yom Kippur. It's a very important day for Jews all around the world. But a University of Maryland student group called the Students for Justice in Palestine, they scheduled a vote on an anti-Israel resolution today. It's drawing criticism as most Jewish students are not able to vote because they're home with their families praying and dedicated to introspection. Joining us to discuss is Dr. Zachary Marshall. He's editor-in-chief with Campus Reform. Thank you so much, Zachary, for joining us. Your publication has covered this story and many others like it on campuses. Can you offer some background in this specific instance?
Yeah, so Students in Justice for Palestine is a campus group with chapters at multiple universities that we have covered since October 7th. They have been at the forefront of the violent attacks and protests that we have seen against Jewish students and against any other pro-Israel, pro-America student on campus. And this is important because it is in something as mundane as a student government resolution that was being put forward on Yom Kippur that really shows how we got here as a country. When you disregard other people's religion or ethnicities or values, it's easy to dehumanize them. And this chapter was trying to put forward a anti-Israel resolution in student government, first on Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, and then on Yom Kippur today, which is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. They know what they're doing, and they're trying to silence Jewish voices, and it is that type of behavior that has made Jews unsafe in higher education.
Yeah, thank you for that summary. And now, while the Trump administration is extracting money from campuses that he says allowed anti-Semitism to run unchecked, such as Columbia, UPenn, and Brown, and he's currently negotiating with several others, such as Harvard. In this instance, it's the reverse, right? The University of Maryland actually paid the offending group $100K in a settlement. Considering this campus is right in the D.C. Beltway, can you explain what's happening at the University of Maryland?
I think we can look at it as complicity because it's very easy if you are a big university to say we cannot be everywhere all the time and the student government has its own affairs. And it's very easy for the student government to say, as it has, that these meetings when certain votes would be held were already baked into the calendar. But the problem is that for decades, universities have known that some of the holiest days in the Jewish calendar happen always in the middle of the fall semester, and reasonable accommodations have been made ahead of time. That is not true in this case. They talk about proxy voting, but when your religion tells you not to perform work on the holiest day of the year, proxy voting isn't really a great substitute. So what we're seeing at the University of Maryland is a culture of indifference around this particular incident, and that is what leads to the offensive and violent actions we've seen elsewhere at other universities. So I think it's important, even though we're talking about a procedural process here, that it's these little things that snowball over time, and that's why we need to call them out and talk about them early on.
Yeah, very interesting, especially University of Maryland, one known to have quite a large Jewish student population. Now, at present, the funding of such groups like Antifa are being scrutinized. They've been deemed a terrorist organization. Do you think these student-led protests are entirely organic, or are there professional organizers, agitators that might be getting some kind of an incentive? And if so, from whom?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of both. We have reported since October 7th that there are external actors at play. We have reported about the way money from George Soros Foundation trickles down into left-wing causes in America, and then those are somehow connected to these campus protests. We've also talked about the National Students for Justice in Palestine and their network and their connections to anti-Israel activism off campus. The ringleaders, the people who were buying the tents, that is not organic. But what is organic is that so much of Gen Z is really lost and searching for a cause and undereducated. And so the ability to get lots of people riled up, to be involved in these tent encampments, be involved in these mass protests that target people based on their religion, that is organic. They are preying on the weak and vulnerable who were failed by the education system. And that is something we need to address. We need to look at the fundamental failures in our education system if we want to stop another mass wave of student protests in the future.
Yeah, and then the goal of these anti-Israel resolutions, in particular this one, is at the University of Maryland. It's to divest anything related to Israel. Is this binding, or is it more of like a political statement? And who gets to take part in the vote in this instance?
Yeah, it's a political statement. Does not impact what the university's official policy is, and would be voted on by the student government. So those members of the SGA would be the ones voting on it. But as we, reported for years, and immediately after October 7th, it's these types of activities on campuses, whether you're looking at SGA, graduate reading groups, student organizations, that while they do not have a binding effect on university policy, they do shape the culture of campus, and they normalize the process of dehumanizing others based on religion or national origin, and that is why you have to take it seriously. And what is brewing on campuses, within lecture halls, within the SGA meetings, within on the quad, is ultimately the university's responsibility. So we do need to make it clear that University of Maryland is responsible for what happens on its campus.
Yes, and as we start to finish up, of course, campuses should be a place for free debate and civil, even heated discussions, but these incidents really aren't about discourse. Your publication has documented anti-Semitism dramatically on the rise, even post-October 7th, continuing to rise. So can you elaborate as to what you see happening with anti-Semitism today on college campuses?
Yeah, we've seen this critical point right now that it's been normalized and comfortable for people to dehumanize Jews, for people to say that any type of rhetoric that is an incitement to violence, whether it's a call to genocide or threat of physical attack, is political speech or free speech. That is just not the case. It's not free speech when it can be used to incite violence against others. And that is the trend line that Campus Reform is reporting on. And I think once people start to have empathy for a population that they might not understand or don't know about, then they'll change their mind. We have a YouTube video out on our YouTube channel this morning where you see Christians and Muslims talk on University of Maryland's campus talk about this resolution, and they realize that, oh, if this was happening to something that affected me on Ramadan or Christmas, then that would be an issue for me. So I think that's what we are trying to do in our reporting, is show that the attacks and the dehumanization of Jews is an exception to what everyone else says they purport to believe, which is that no one should be discriminated against based on their religion or national origin. That's not been the case in higher ed for a long time, and that is the hypocrisy that we were trying to expose.
Yeah, the Christmas or Ramadan analogy really does hit home. It's the golden rule, right? We appreciate your work, Dr. Zachary Marshall, Editor-in-Chief at the Campus Reform. Thank you.